Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends podcast. With me today is a legend who's not a podiatrist. I have Lisa Perry with me from Pod Plan, and we're going to be talking about practice memberships and the importance of predictable revenue. So, Lisa, welcome to the Podiatry Legends podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm actually excited about this because I think we connected many months ago and we just kept missing each other through emails and times that we were away. So I'm glad we've finally been able to organize a time to do this recording. And plus, I don't know anything about practice memberships, and I'm really intrigued what this all means.
It's really interesting to me that you say that, Tyson, because membership is actually all around us in our days. And most people are members of multiple things in their life.
Oh,
I think
definitely.
these days we probably talk about subscription more
Yeah.
than we talk about membership. But the reality is that membership is not a new thing. And it's not a new thing in health either, but it's relatively new for private podiatry. So that's the nugget really that's very exciting to you and I, and hopefully to your listeners.
Yeah, because I know when you talk about that type of membership, yes, I'm a member of a Muay Thai gym, and previously I've been a member of like normal gym where you do weights, and you do have subscriptions. Everybody would have some form of subscription where for some online programming. So we understand that side of things. But how do you use it in podiatry?
Well, what we do, our approach anyway,
Yeah.
is that we create memberships for podiatry practices based on their personal requirements and their personal knowledge of their own customers. And so we use the word bespoke a lot in Pod Plan, because when we work with a practice, we create a membership that really aligns to what the practice owner wants to achieve with their practice long term, but also what they want to offer to their members or their patients before they
Yeah.
become members on a day-to-day basis. We also tie in how they want their membership to actually make their practice feel. And that really boils down to a lot of improvement operationally often. Lots of that happens organically when you have a membership, because membership can really simplify everything that you do in your practice, whether that's because you are not taking payments from 70 patients a day, perhaps if
Yeah.
you've got a nice big clinic, or just because you are able to see those patients on a regular basis and they are committed to your practice. So they're arriving every single, let's say 6-7 weeks are our most popular memberships for routine care.
Yep.
And you know that patient. So it makes your life easier. On the other hand, it makes your patient's experience superior, because their experience with you on an appointment by appointment basis is simplified, very simply simplified, but simplified nonetheless. And they really enjoy that.
Okay. So you're taking a patient that comes into your podiatry business, and then you're offering some form of membership for ongoing care, depending on how your clinic is actually set up. So if you're a clinic that has a lot of routine foot care, you might have one type of membership, but if you're an MSK clinic, it'd be completely different?
Yeah. The most common memberships that we get asked to create are for routine care.
Okay, yeah. Well, that makes sense.
Because it's really easy to put together a membership for routine care. So what we generally do when we're creating a membership is we have a look at baseline operating costs, and we create baseline operating charges. So when we work with the practice, we do a full piece of business analysis first before we do anything to do with membership. So we are looking at costs, occupancy, team, future costs, and a whole host of other things go into this big cauldron, really, to consider what we need to achieve as a baseline operating cost.
So you actually get the podiatrist thinking about what's happening behind the business, not just taking everything for granted.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
We work with practices for about 4 months before we would even consider launching a membership. So we run through a really big piece of business analysis. And we do try and keep it as simple as possible for the podiatrists. We've been doing this quite a long time, and we've run our own practice and our own practice membership for 15 years too. So we really know what it takes. And believe me, our practice membership was far from perfect the first time that we launched it. So we've learned a lot by doing it the wrong way in the early days. But we run through a really robust piece or process of business analysis. And that is looking at the business expenses, the costs, it's looking at teams, looking at hours, but it's also looking at what the practice owners actually want from the practice in the long term, and what we need to do with pricing now and in the future in order for the practice owners to be able to achieve that. It's actually usually that process is really interesting for the podiatry practice owners, because although many forward-thinking practice owners have a good idea of what they need to do on the in the here and now, on the day-to-day, it can be really difficult to apply that to the long term. And more importantly, it can be really difficult to actually create from that something that is an attractive business sale proposition for an investor. And to me, that's one of the biggest benefits of creating a membership, is that you are creating a business that is not just going to sell to somebody else, usually a podiatrist, as a job. You are creating something that the moment you step out of the business, you can have 100% confidence that it's going to continue as it is the last day that you're in it. So the person buying your practice takes over tomorrow. Your direct debit payments, which is how we take payment for practices, will continue, guaranteed.
Yeah, that side of things doesn't change.
It's an amazing change for private practice owners.
So are you saying the practice owners that are using PodPlan, all their patients are on this membership? This is just how they run their whole business? Or is it offered to patients and some choose to do it and some choose not to do it? And I assume the ones that choose to do it who are on this regular monthly payment, there's going to be some added benefit to them to want to be paying a regular amount each month.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we go back to what memberships normally look like, so I think I probably went off on a tangent talking about
that's okay.
But the most common way to create a membership is to create a routine membership. So most private practices in the UK anyway will offer some form of routine regular treatment for full foot treatments, usually about a 30-minute appointment, and they will also offer a nail cutting appointment. Not all do, but that's common. So what we do is we apply our baseline hourly rate to our routine treatments, and we create membership packages from them. So that means that all of the treatments we offer on the membership, so the routine care and the nail care, will be based upon the baseline hourly rate for that practice. And this differs from practice to practice.
Yeah, of course.
That means that your members are able to pay at the best possible price in your practice. And what we also do is we apply those baseline hourly rates to other treatments that the practice offers. Most practices these days, which is wonderful to see because the private sector is really evolving, certainly in the UK more and more. So most practices will offer other treatments. So they might offer shockwave, they might offer laser, they might have a completely different section of their business. So they might offer massage or acupuncture.
Yeah.
And so what we get to do is we create a members only price list. So our members are able to access the best possible prices. It doesn't mean to say that if you're offering nail surgery that you're going to offer that at your absolute flat baseline hourly rate. Of course, we take into consideration that these treatments are specialist and they might achieve a premium, but they're still going to be offered to your members at the best rates. What we also do is we apply a non-member rate to the same treatments. And that means that people that are non-members, so these are people who are not as committed to your practice. They are also the patients that are going to come to your practice less frequently.
Yeah.
They often come to your practice when they really should have come a couple of months ago. And therefore they often need more time. And they're also the type of patients usually who are most likely to DNA, most likely to turn up late, and most likely to complain. So these are the patients that are less loyal, less committed to your practice, less committed to their health maintenance, and they are charged the non-member rates.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, because I've spoken to a lot of people recently and I've been saying to them that if you said to a patient, I want you back in 8 weeks' time, I said, they should be written in your notes, you want them back in 8 weeks' time. If they choose to come in 6 months, if they say, well, I'm not going to make an appointment now, I'll call you when I'm ready, and you let them walk out. If they come back in 6 months, I go, you should not be charging them your normal standard consultation fee, because you said you wanted to see them in 8 weeks. There's a reason for that. I said, for them to come in 6 months and you still just charge them the same price, I said, the only person being punished is yourself, because you happen to do all this extra work. And a lot of times these are the ones that make you run late for the patients who do come in on a regular basis. And you start annoying your good patients. So this membership idea actually makes sense.
In answer to your question, it's not compulsory to join a membership. It's not compulsory to join the practice membership. What we find is podiatry is a wonderful business to run in terms of how consistently your customers come to you. Most customers will come to a private practice for routine care between 6 weekly and 8 weekly intervals. And for any business, that's wonderful. I mean, nobody goes to a dress shop consistently 6 weekly or 8 weekly today. So the opportunity there is wonderful. The challenge for a private practice is capturing that opportunity and making sure that they offer something to their customers that allows their customers to commit to the practice. What we find is that most patients that are going to a practice anyway are delighted to be able to get into the inner circle of the practice, to really become part of the practice. I know with our practice, when we were running it, even our real golden oldie patients that had been coming to us for 10 years would say to us, I am a member though, Lisa, I'm a member.
Yeah.
And I used to find that fascinating when we'd seen them every 6 weeks for 10 years, but when they joined the membership, they felt even more important to us. And what that gives the practice owners is the opportunity to really deeply understand their customers and to start focusing. What happens when, as a membership grows, is all your decisions about your practice become more simple, because you can base them on a very specific group of patients or people. So you start to make your decisions thinking, what does my membership need? Or what do my team need in order to best serve my membership? What does my practice need, maybe in terms of equipment, in order to best serve my membership, which is the backbone of my business? What do we need in those areas, rather than Christmas is coming up, what shall we do?
Yeah.
We've had a quiet period. Shall we do a special offer? Shall we make a reduction? And these questions are really big and they feel less tangible. Whereas when you're basing everything on the satisfaction of your members who are extremely loyal to you, or the growth of your membership, because you're very clear about your long-term vision for your practice and how your membership can get you there methodically, then everything about your practice becomes more simple.
Yeah, and I think if podiatrists consider where they have been a member somewhere, I think like the membership is different to subscription, because you might be subscribed to, say, Netflix, for example. They give you nothing. They really, you subscribe, you get to watch shows, but they don't really give you anything. You don't really feel like you belong to anything. Oh, except the Amazon Prime is a little bit different, because you do get, they're the only ones that do give you added benefits. If you've got your Amazon Prime account, you get free postage on certain things. So they do a couple of special things. But I know the Muay Thai gym that I'm part of, there's people who go to the classes and they just pay per class as they do it. They might get a 10 class pass, and it might be $16 a class, or they'll pay $20 if they're very random. But if you have your fortnightly or every 2 weeks, money comes out of your account and you're one of the members of the club, you get invited to special events that they put on. And when they do different dinners, that you get an invite to that. So you get all these special things that the other people who are not as committed don't get. So I can really see how this could work in podiatry and with certain patient types.
Absolutely. And how far a practice want to go with their membership in terms of what they offer is really up to them. And again, this is something that's so wonderful about what we get to do is we create memberships on a per practice basis. Some practices might be very simple, quite small practices, and they offer their routine care, but they want to ensure that they're charging what they need to charge.
Yeah.
Many practices aren't. And so
And I
that's
do like how you dig into that first before you set what the membership fee is going to be. You actually make them sit down, look at all their expenses, and really think about what they should be charging.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely crucial. And the reality is, although there's absolutely no drive for us at Podplan to increase prices, there's no benefit to us with that at all.
Mm.
Reality is that most practice owners are undercharging. And
Yeah, I know.
going through that process is a real eye-opener. And not just, we don't just do the analysis and say, you need to charge £200 an hour. We explain what's going on. And what happens in that process is really wonderful, because when we come to actually create the memberships, the practice owner really understands where those figures have come from. And so talking about the membership and explaining to customers the opportunity is to join the membership, or what the changes are that are going to be happening in the practice, if that's the case, becomes so easy. There's no selling. It's just explaining we're making these changes because, and it's completely transparent. So the process helps to stabilize the business on many levels, on charging and then on recruiting members into the membership to create that predictable revenue. But it also gives the practice owner absolute confidence that what they're charging is correct. And it makes everything easier. And not just to patients, to team as well. Being able to explain to the team, this is the process we've been through. And some practices include the team in the process, which is great. This is what we've done. This is what we've looked at. And did you know, actually, we haven't been operating at 80% occupancy. We've been operating at 60. And even though I thought my, laser was making us money, it's actually costing us money. And therefore, we've been charging £25 an hour too little. No wonder I, as the practice owner, have actually had to cut my wages for 5 consistent months, which is common. Because ultimately, if a practice has grown to a certain level and they have certain outgoings, this is what's happening. We see practice owners who have left an NHS position, earning decent wages. They start their podiatry practice, they invest heavily in it, and it's wonderful. And to the outside, it looks fabulous. They've got all the bells and whistles, but it's really expensive to run that. And if there are dips, and I refer to this as the revenue roller coaster, and we're going up and it's wonderful and it feels fantastic and you're super excited. And then we have one of our key fee earners sick for a week. Before you know it, you're actually wondering how you're going to pay your bills.
I think some of them just think, oh, that's just part of business. That's just what you have to go through, but that's not always the case. One thing I wanted to point out, though, what I really like about what you're doing with the memberships is that distinction between your committed patients and your non-committed patients. And there's a lot of time when I've said to coaching clients, and I've looked at their fees and we look at their expenses, I go, you don't charge enough, like in certain areas, or you need to put your fees up. Or the people who are not committed to your practice, you need to charge them far more. And even if you annoy them, then it doesn't matter, because they're not coming back on a regular basis anyway. They fill up spots. Like you said, they've got an increased chance of no showing, not attending for their appointments. They cause problems. They're a bit of a pain in the bum every now and then. So yeah, I totally get it. So question, the podiatrists that you've worked with so far, the business owners who have actually taken this on board, what has been their feedback so far? Have most of them gone, oh, wow, this is so much easier than I thought it was going to be? Has it taken them a little while to, did they get a bit anxious trying to introduce it? Because whenever there's something really different, people panic sometimes.
No, we haven't had anybody panic, luckily. But no, because when a practice starts working with Podplan, we have a really formulaic approach. And we explain that before we get started. I think one of the things to point out is that at PodPlan anyway, we don't charge a practice anything to work with us for the initial period at all. We only make money when a practice starts making money.
Okay,
So we
that's
only
good.
charge this when they start collecting membership payments on a monthly basis, which we help them to do as well by setting up a direct debit portal for them. So there's no initial payment. If there was an initial payment, and to be honest, when we first started doing this quite a long time ago, there was an initial payment, and that added a lot of pressure for practices, and that's why we made changes in our own offering. So there's no financial outlay initially, so that takes the pressure off. However, there is a time frame, and as I mentioned before, it's 4 months to go through the process with us. Our process is really methodical. We carry out business analysis. This is where we have a look at all the costs and have a look at what the baseline operating charge should be. Then we create the membership. So we put together the offering. Going back to your initial question about routine and MSK, we do practices that have MSK-based memberships. They're fewer just because we have fewer of those practices in the UK. And actually, some MSK practices that are heavily MSK actually still create a routine-based membership, but they offer all of their MSK treatments at discounted rates to their members.
Okay.
So there's different ways that you can set that up. But
do you ever get any podiatrists when you're doing the initial evaluation over that 4-month period that you get like a month, 6 weeks into it, and you're banging your head against the wall going, this podiatrist is just thick. We need to move on. This is not going to work. You must have copped a couple of thick podiatrists that you've just gone, or have they all, you've gotten through the 4 months with them?
We haven't had anybody that we have stopped the process with. We've got to the point where we created a membership. We have had, I can think of one practice that actually decided not to take their membership forward at that point, and that was for personal reasons. But nonetheless, the membership is there, it's created, and it could start effectively, depending on how long the time is between when you pause that launch and when you reignite it, would dictate whether we need to carry out further business analysis, because obviously things could have changed. But no, I haven't had anybody that we thought, we literally can't get to the end of the process with. But
well, the good part is with this podcast is thick podiatrists don't listen to this podcast.
So they're all laughing as much as me then.
Yeah, they're laughing. Yeah, they would have heard me say, oh, you're any thick podiatrists. And I assume most people listen to this podcast will go, yeah, I know who he's talking about. There are some thick ones out there. Yeah, so that's good.
Well, although I definitely couldn't say we've had thick podiatrists, what we definitely have is podiatrists that are really scared to dig into their finances. And
that I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And also podiatrists who are incredible at what they do, most definitely not thick, but don't understand the finances and the financial implications of what it is that they have in their business, both for good and for bad.
Because sometimes, when you said about digging into the finances, though, sometimes the truth is really painful when people pull back the covers and really look what's there. And it's no different to when you might have your partner or friends or something, and you ask for an honest opinion on something, and you really don't want it. And sometimes it's really positive, and you go, "Oh, that's great. I was scared. No need to be." And there's other times when you're getting honest feedback about something, and it hurts, and it's very uncomfortable. So I can imagine the apprehension sometimes as you're uncovering information about their business.
Yeah, absolutely. However, I think when the great thing about doing that with somebody is that you feel more confident to ask questions, because it's easier to get some answers. I think when we're all sitting on our own at 10, 11 o'clock at night, poring over our Zero account or whatever it is that we're using, trying to get to grips with why there's no money in the bank to, I don't know, usually pay ourselves, as I said earlier, it's a very isolating place. And to go through the process of analysing your practice with somebody is really reassuring. Obviously, we're doing this with a view to making specific changes in the business that we already know can completely revolutionise the way that you live as a practice owner. The other thing, and I feel I really must mention this because I know that some of your listeners already know and might be thinking, but say about dentistry. I'm really lucky because I grew up in dental membership. So my parents created a really big dental membership program, which is called Practice Plan in the UK.
Okay.
It's very similar. Lots of people know either about Practice Plan or Den Plan in the UK. My parents sold that business about 20 years ago. But the reason they created it was because my dad was a financial advisor. He was a very proactive young buck who wanted to change everybody's lives.
Yeah.
And he ended up working with lots of private practice owners. At the time, it was quite a lot of vets. We lived really rurally, and dentists. And it was at a time where dentists in the UK had essentially started being brave enough to leave the NHS. So they already had contracts with the NHS that were paying. So those contracts were paying them monthly. But there were loads of changes with the contracts. Dentists became less satisfied. They were being squeezed in every direction, shorten your appointment times, see people for less, and so on and so forth. And they got sick of it. So they started to leave the NHS model. As they left it, because it was horrible,
Yeah.
they moved into private practice. But private practice wasn't as shiny as they thought it was going to be, because all of a sudden there were months where they might not earn anything relatively. And so when my dad was working with these quite forward-thinking, brave guys, he, despite his best efforts, couldn't plan their finances for them. So he was a financial advisor looking at how can we plan for your retirement? How can we plan for your stability and your comfort? And he actually couldn't do it. We're talking about a guy who was being sent on bonus trips to Thailand for 3 weeks in 1993. He was a good financial advisor and he still couldn't do it. So he created Practice Plan, and Practice Plan does exactly what Pod Plan does, in that it creates private practice memberships for dentists. They sold the business when they had, I think, more than 350 practices working with them. And some of those practices operated solely on membership. And some of them had several thousand members. But the point is that we have seen this work in private dentistry. Private podiatry is emerging as something that's commonplace. Certainly in the UK, I think it's probably more established in Australia.
Australia, it's majority. Like when you go through university, when I went through, it was you're going to work in a private practice. And especially in Queensland, very few people went and worked for community health or in a hospital system or for the government. It's a little bit more now, but still majority would go into private practice.
Right. Okay. Well, that's wonderful. And I think it's going the same way in the UK. And I think most people listening to this who are based in the UK would probably agree that it feels like we're at a pivotal moment in the UK in terms of how necessary.
I have noticed that the last few years that the UK's thinking towards private practice is changing. And I think it also stems back to some of the people that work at the universities. We've got to stop scaring students that private practice is scary. It's not scary. It's fun. The NHS sounds scary. But yeah.
We were talking about this recently, actually, at the Leading Practice Symposium run by Emily Ball and Paul Kincaid, that we really do need to see a change in UK universities in terms of their approach to their training offered for private practice, to own or work in private practices. We don't produce in the UK podiatrists that are as able to work in private practice as they are in the NHS. And that's a problem for private practice owners because we can't employ people who are ready to go.
I think even in the universities over here, and I've said it numerous times, that I wish some of the lecturers at the universities would just teach the content that the students need, not give them their personal opinion on private practice and life outside of university, because the students actually listen to them. And if you get a lecturer who's a bit of a dickhead, it's the easiest way of putting it, and they're putting negative thoughts, or make sure you don't work for this person who keeps KPIs. And I'm thinking, so you don't want to know whether your performance, whether your a key performance indicators also give you a pat on the back when you're doing the right thing. And they scare students that don't work for that type of person. I'm thinking that's
Mm.
silly. You want to work for those
I,
sort of people.
I agree. And I think the reality is that a lot of podiatrists won't have a choice.
Mm.
We're seeing, even locally, as you know, and based on the Isle of Man, we're seeing excellent podiatry assistants facing having their hours cut in the health service because the health service funding is an issue in the health service, and cuts will need to be made. So I think the reality is that a lot of people who even do work in the health service will start considering working in private health. Just going back to the lecturers, I heard an interesting comment actually again at the Legion Practice Symposium, which was about the fact that a lecturer actually stood up and gave us a really good, when we were talking about this, and he gave us a really good rundown of what was happening in his university and some of the feedback they'd had. And he said, we actually stopped offering an element of business in the course because the students fed back that they didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was, well, entertaining, to be honest, because
It's true.
this isn't about firstly, who's delivering it and what are you delivering if it's so unenjoyable, because most people who don't know about an area very much are quite interested to learn about it if it's delivered in the right way. So I think that's been my first question. But also, what are you explaining to your students about the requirement or the necessity of this information? I'm sure if they understood how essential it's going to be for their futures, it would be something that they probably buckle down and at least participate in
Oh,
with some
definitely.
gusto, and just
Yeah.
say they don't like.
My lecturers, when I went through, I must say, all the lecturers that I had at the time were bloody brilliant. Like, they were really good lecturers. There was never any negative talk about the profession, about private practice. Everything they ever said to us was always positive. But I know, like when I wrote my book, It's No Secret There's Money in Podiatry, and I approached all the universities and I said, hey, I'd love to come in and talk to your final year students, what it's like in the real world, just from my point of view. And none of them got back to me, except one eventually did. Paul Butterworth, you're a legend. And but then they had a business subject, and the guy that they had coming in at QUT to talk on this business subject, from what I knew about him, he had two podiatry clinics, both unsuccessful. Yet he was in there doing the lecture on podiatry business. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, if I was a student, I probably would have hated it too, because he was a really boring speaker.
Yeah, really uninspiring, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really uninspiring. And I think that's probably what people feel, podiatrists feel about private practice, especially if they've only worked in NHS. But things are really changing in private practice in the UK. I realise that you're streets ahead in Australia, but you know what? Even 15 years ago, when we had our private practice, there was so much more fear about what we could offer or couldn't offer. I mean, the very mention of a foot health professional was, we had to whisper those sorts
Yeah.
of words because possibly be bringing that level of practitioner into the podiatry profession. Now that sort of thing is commonplace, really building excellent structure in a business, different pricing bands, so on and so forth, giving practice owners scope to offer as many treatments as they possibly can and really serve their customers. So I think things are changing for the better, and it's extremely necessary.
The good part is, though, even though like it's different to Australia and we're both different to how it's run in the United States, regardless of how it's structured in the education process and how we approach private practice, I still think this whole thing about having memberships and membership levels and members and non-members, I really think it's something that wouldn't matter what country you're in, you can apply this in one form or another.
Absolutely, you really can. And ultimately, what it gives the practice is something that I don't think is possible in any other way, and that is predictable income.
Mm.
Because if you're offering a service that essentially is a pay-as-you-go service, come in, have your treatment, and pay. So just by the very nature of that sequence of events, you're already opening your business up to various levels of vulnerability. Your patient might not turn up. We all know what that feels like.
Yeah.
How many podiatrists listening to this have moved heaven and earth to get into their private practice, even if it's sheet ice, even if your child's sick, or in our case, I know I've been in our practice and moved heaven and earth when my kids have been in hospital to make sure that I can see, or at least open the door to patients.
You will kill yourself to be in your practice by a certain time,
Yeah.
and then the patient doesn't turn up.
Yeah.
And you just,
Heartbreaking.
oh, it does. It just it tears a gaping hole
Heartbreaking.
in your chest.
It does. And even worse, when you've paid somebody else to be there for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And you've, as you know, we live on an island. To relocating podiatrists here is a very expensive thing to do. We've done all that. We're paying over the odds, and we've set somebody up in a new house and relocated their kids, whatever else it might be. And that person's there, absolutely all guns blazing. The heating's pumping out the radiators, all the equipment's whirring away, the electric bill's going through the roof, and people just don't bother to show up. It's just staggering. In what other world would this be acceptable? And yet we accept it.
I know it's in, if you book a hotel room, you don't turn up, you're paying for it.
Yeah.
It's just, it's one of those things.
You miss a flight,
You pay for it.
Might be a £10,000 flight, you're still going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And yet we struggle. So we have people not turning up. We have people turning up late. Then we have people turning up who don't need the appointment that they're booked in for. So maybe they need less of an appointment. So less time, less cost. What do we do then? Oh, can't charge them for what they were booked in for. Just can't do it. It's just not fair. We're going to have to half that. We're going to half it. But people aren't doing, practice owners struggle to do that.
Yeah.
And then even we can also have somebody have their treatment and have all the equipment and the time, the expertise, and the great level of care, and then go to the reception desk and for whatever reason not pay. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen that. I definitely have.
I've heard about it where people say, oh, I forgot to bring money. How could you possibly leave the house without money?
I forgot my wallet, or I wasn't happy with the treatment. It was not what I expected. It's not good enough. And all of these things put the podiatrist, usually often the practice owner, and sometimes it's a team member, in a really difficult position.
Yeah.
And it becomes, and it's every little thing that impacts on the ability of a practice owner to achieve guaranteed, predictable revenue at the right rate. And membership, to me, is the only thing that a private practice can do that will, over time, because obviously it takes time to grow a membership, guarantee income. And when you have predictable income in a practice, everything changes, because you become absolutely laser focused on what you're offering on a day-to-day basis, what you're striving to achieve as a practice, and how consistently you can do any one of those things. It introduces a level of simplicity in your business owning life like nothing else can. But it also allows your customers to know exactly where they stand, to know exactly what they can access in your practice and what they can't, and to experience a level of simplicity on a appointment by appointment basis. So members don't pay when they're there. Sounds really small, but we used to have people just rocking up, no handbag, no phone, nothing. See, I'm a member. Yep, okay, off you go.
Yeah.
It's really simple. They love it. Often they book many appointments ahead, so they're not even stopping to book. The knock-on effect for your team is that they know, let's just say they have 50% of their diary filled with members. They know when they look at that appointment list on their system that exactly who those people are. They know exactly what's going on with their feet. They know exactly how long it's going to take to see them. They know they can see them in the allotted time.
Yeah.
They run to time. They know they're not going to have to book them in because they're probably booked in for 5 or 6 appointments ahead. They know they're not going to have to take payment. They know they're not going to have any payment pushback. They know that if they have a special offer that it would suit or not suit that member, so they're going to mention it.
A lot of benefits.
There's so many, it simplifies everything.
I can actually see how this could work really well too, where somebody might have their main practice and they might have a satellite practice in a smaller town, or you might have called them
Mm.
counties over there, in a small county. And
Yes.
whenever I think of county, I think there's got to be a bridge. There's got to be a bridge that takes you into the county in the UK.
Probably is
But,
in the UK. We have so much water.
I know this. Yeah, there is. It's always wet. Anyway, if they have their main clinic and then
Mm.
they have another satellite clinic they might visit, could be once a month. If that whole clinic was all based around every patient that you'll see at that clinic is a member, then how much easier it would be for the podiatrist to go and just work all day on those patients, not have to worry about taking payments, sorting out receipts, making the next appointment. It's all done for them. I can see how that could work. And if people say, oh, we want to make an appointment at that place, oh, only members can book at that clinic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, very special.
Yeah, it's fabulous. And in terms of how many members a practice has, obviously this is all stuff that we calculate at Pod Plan. How many
Yeah.
members do you need to achieve XYZ? What's your short, medium, long term goal with your membership? How many members do you want each practitioner to have? But of course, you can decide to just be a membership-based practice. And we saw this start happening in dentistry, where dentists said, you know what? Our membership is so good for our business. Either a patient is a member or they're not with our practice. And that's how you can go with membership.
Have you ever read that book called Dental Happiness by
No.
Paddy Lund? Wrote it, oh, geez, back in the 80s or something like that. And he was a dentist. I actually have a copy of his book. It's really hard to get hold of.
No,
And
right.
he was a
Not on my
dentist,
list.
had a mental breakdown.
Mm.
And when he decided, and he had really busy practice, when he came back, he went through all his patients. This is where I first heard of the A, B, C, and D patients. And all his D patients were what he called dead. They were a real pain in the butt. He got rid of them. He wanted to keep all his A patients. And he said to his B patients, for you to stay in my practice, you must become an A patient. And this is what an A patient is. And to all the C patients, he said, I'm going to get rid of you as well. So the B patients had to become an A or leave. The C patients and D patients he got rid of. He ended up putting his prices up. Say, for example, he doubled what he was charging. And the only way that you could be a patient at his clinic would be, he didn't have a sign up that said dentist. It was just a gold apple on the door. And you couldn't just walk in. You had to push the doorbell to actually get in, because they knew who was coming, when they were coming. And the only way you could stay as a patient, you had to refer 2 people a year that were at your level or above. If you had a friend who said, oh, I'm looking for a really good dentist, you look at your friend and went, oh, you're a bit unreliable and you don't always pay your bills. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, I don't know who you should see. So, and this was part of the deal. He gave him a little case that had some business cards in there. You had to refer 2 people a year to maintain your like membership to actually come to his practice. He only worked 3 days a week and ended up making twice the amount of money and was extremely happy by really focusing on building the practice that he wanted with the patients that he wanted.
Oh, I love that.
It's a fantastic
I
book.
love, and that is where you can go with your membership if you want to. And I think it's really interesting to hear you explain the sort of mentality of that dentist, Tyson, because actually often what we see in podiatry practices is that the level of self-belief required to make those types of decisions, to lock the door and put your prices up, is not really there for many private practice owners at the moment, certainly in the UK. And again, going through the process of business analysis and actually taking a moment to look at what you're doing for your patients, the change you make to their life, which interestingly, the patients already think most of the time. Your patients, so many patients rely heavily on their podiatrist and would class them as one of the most important people in their lives, probably, because they keep them pain free, or they keep them mobile, or they stop them losing toes. It's massive, the impact that a podiatrist can make on somebody's life. So the belief around that is not, or the slightly skewed belief around the importance of a podiatrist and what they offer actually, in my view, doesn't really lie with the patient or the customer. It often lies with the practice owner. And that's where we need to see a real shift in approach, in outlook, in mentality. Going through a business analysis process and creating something that really serves your specific customers is really useful in doing that, because it allows you to reframe yourself, what you've been thinking and believing about you or about your practice, about your team, because often that's really quite low in a practice compared to the reality of what's actually happening. So I think there's quite a lot of mindset work that actually happens through the process of creating a membership.
Oh, yeah, I have no doubt.
And it's a shift. It's a shift. It actually start verbalizing, writing down what it is that you offer. Why is your practice so good? What are you prepared to do for your customers that they maybe aren't getting from the practice down the street? Because they are usually different. And not to say the practice down the street isn't doing something equally as fantastic, but it's probably not the same as you.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said then too, though, about the whole mindset, because even when I do my marketing workshops, a big focus at the beginning of the marketing workshop is really talking about mindset, because how you're thinking will affect whatever strategies you put together, whether it's membership or anything else, or what tactic you choose to do. People who are stressed with money and who have got a really negative mindset will make bad decisions every time. So they're not making decisions from the right place. So, hey, before we wrap up, if people want to get hold of you, what is the best way of doing this? What are your email address, website? I will have it in the notes.
Yeah, absolutely. People can touch base through our website. So that's just podplan.uk, or drop us an email, support@podplan.uk. We'd love to hear from you.
Okay. Now, you're working with everyone in the UK. Have you worked with anybody in any other country, like Australia, New Zealand?
Not yet, but we'd love to. So if anybody wants to chat and find out how we can support you, we offer a full service package. So we talked a lot today about business analysis, but we also create your memberships. We offer team training. We actually set up your own direct debit portal for you, and we manage that for you. We find lots of practices really stumble at that point. So implementing the membership, growing the membership, and doing the kind of sometimes laborious and time-consuming part of managing direct debit payments. We do all of that for you, but we also support you to grow your membership. Lots of people have memberships that they've created, usually by taking an hourly rate or an appointment charge that may not be accurate in the first place and discounting it for members. So that's the most commonly. And then that's rolled out to a certain degree. Maybe somebody gets to about 100 members, and then they think, God, this is quite a lot of effort. Why are we bothering in the first place? Because actually we're losing money on these customers because we discounted our rate.
And that's what happens in Australia. We have private health funds where patients will have a private health fund and they'll use it, and you get a certain amount of money back from the health fund every time you see a podiatrist. And some podiatrists are part of a certain membership group with that particular health fund. But to be part of that, they've got to agree to charge less. And that's the type of thing that I always tell people, don't get involved in that, because you're losing every time you see a patient, you lose money. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I've just been working with a physio practice, very similar. 40% of their revenue was from insurance, but they actually only needed about 10% of those patients at their normal baseline hourly rate that we calculated in order to make the same money. So we have to ask the question about insurance companies as to what the benefit is to ourselves. Again, we come back to the mindset. What are we worth? What's our value? Will we have enough customers if we don't have these insurance companies dictating prices? When we started our podiatry practice, we made a conscious decision not to work with any insurance companies, and we never did. Happy to provide an invoice to go and claim your insurance. If you can do that's great, but that's nothing. And also I think with insurance we need to look at the level of admin that we're injecting into our own business in order to facilitate other people's insurance claims. Not 100% sure how it works in Australia, but here physio practice I'm talking about basically needed to employ one full-time equivalent in order to service the level of admin that was created by insurance claims and non-payments.
Yeah, no, it's not that bad here, but I had someone that I knew who was on the Sunshine Coast, and their podiatry clinic, and they said, "Oh, we're not making any money." So I looked through everything. They were losing about $3,000 to $4,000 a month, and the bank account was just getting lower and lower. So I went down there, had a look at everything, and I said, something like 93% of your patients are getting some form of discount or another. This is only about 7% they're actually paying the full price. So I got them to make all these changes, and within, I think it was like the second month of doing that, they went from losing $4,000 a month to making $5,000 or $8,000 a month profit. Then the next month it was 10,000. I said, okay, now just keep doing that. 3 months later, they went back to doing what they were doing, and then declared bankruptcy. Because you might have mentioned thick podiatrist. That was a thick podiatrist.
That really was, yeah. I'm going to agree with you on that one.
I looked at him. I said, I showed you what you were doing wrong. You did the right thing. You showed that you made money. Why would you go back? Oh, patients complained. And I went, then replace the patients. I just shook my head. But they're not in podiatry anymore.
No. And going back to membership, this is what we see. We see people practices who have set their own membership up, discounting a rate that's probably not right in the first place, feeling like they're losing money, seeing those patients. So obviously they then don't really want to recruit people onto the membership, because membership is not about discounting. That's not our approach at all. It's about stabilizing a baseline rate. So knowing that you are always achieving an hourly rate that you need to achieve in order to achieve all of your practice goals, and then adding value. So we approach it differently, but when you understand that, it's easy to recruit members onto your membership, because it's good for you and it's great for them. So we see practices doing that, and we support practices to take payments, do all that background admin and setting up direct debit collection. We also manage that for them. So if you get cancellations, you get people who want to make changes, we do that for the practices in the background. And we also support with ongoing training for the practice owner and the team to keep recruiting onto the membership. It takes effort to grow a membership, and we all need some support. Lots of people are working autonomously or in small teams, leading businesses without any input from either a coach or a mentor. So we provide that too, because it takes consistency and some motivation, and we know that everybody needs a helping hand with that sometimes.
No, I think it's great. And you're going to be talking at the Foot and Ankle Show in Liverpool?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I'll be joining you there.
Yes, I will see you there. I'm looking forward to it. Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely we'll have a beer afterwards. So, Lisa, I want to thank you for coming on the Podiatry Legends podcast, talking about Pod Plan, talking about practice memberships and predictable income. And I think anyone who's listening to this all the way through, if they, like you say sometimes, if you did not get something from this particular episode, take 2 Panadol, give yourself an uppercut, and go and lie down for a while, and then come back and listen to it again, because you obviously missed something. So, Lisa, thank you very much for coming on here and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very grateful.
Okay, bye.